tinkering minds, your ideas ignite. Tinkering minds like the sparks take flight. Good morning, thinkers, the future's alive. Tinkering minds where ideas rise. Good morning, thinkers, welcome inside. Tinkering minds keep the spark alive. Good morning, builders, welcome to Tinkering Minds.
Welcome back to Thinkering Minds, where we connect who we are with how we learn. Today we're exploring how STEM comes alive, not just in textbooks or test prep, but on the sidewalks, in museums, parks, neighborhoods, the areas that surround us every day. My guest is Dr. Koshi Dhingra, founder of TalkSTEM and creator of WalkSTEM, an initiative that transforms communities into classrooms. It empowers learners to see the world through a lens of reality, curiosity, mathematics, design, all the things that we love about STEM. Dr. Koshi, welcome to Thinkering Minds.
Thanks so much, Jim. It's a pleasure to be here.
I think you could do a better introduction than I can do, so why don't you tell everybody about yourself a little bit?
Well, as you said, I founded the TalkSTEM nonprofit organization 10 years ago, so we're celebrating 10 years all year this year. We're very excited. And before that, I guess my entire professional life has been education, so I've been middle and high school teacher, got my doctorate at Teachers College, Columbia University, taught undergraduate and graduate level science and STEM teachers. I predate the term STEM, so that's how old I am. So just been in the world of and then I sort of tested the waters with out of school learning when I moved from New York to Texas, which has been about 20 years now. I had a position at University of Texas at Dallas and worked with the founder of the Science and Engineering Education Center. And that's when I really started getting involved with community-based science. So I launched this program called Contact Science, where we worked with public libraries to have people who visited the libraries do really cool, engaging science and STEM activities. So I really got to a point where I say an educator is pretty much everybody, and an educational agent could be screens, TV, film, sports, you name it. So I've gotten to a world where pretty much everything overlaps with everything, you could say. You know, what's STEM and what's not STEM. I wouldn't be able to say what's not STEM. So many people might disagree with me, but that's really where I am today.
I really like that because I also have the same thing where it's kind of like almost like, why does this acronym really exist? Because it applies to everything and it's in everything. It's the foundation for everything. It's so many different voices and experiences and perspectives in STEM on your platform. What was kind of the 2 a.m. moment that made you decide that you had to be a creator and build?
I think I always had that in me. I mean, I was the teacher. I think back, you know how you can retroactively connect the dots. And I think back to myself as a younger teacher, starting out teaching, and I always used to get really jazzed by, and that's the beauty of teaching, you constantly creating. And, or at least I guess I was fortunate that I could in my job, create these activities and lesson plans and opportunities for students and myself to just explore together. And so for me, that was the most exciting thing about teaching. And then the other thing that I think was always a part of who I was as a learner and as an educator was kind of connecting different parts of my life. Like I love connecting and connection points. And so again, dating myself, but back in the day when Jurassic Park came out, the film, and I was teaching, ninth graders biology, and I would play this little game with myself as to like, okay, how do I get that kid who just never seems excited to be here to raise his hand in class today? So I would keep trying these things. And I would notice, hey, when we were having that random discussion about Jurassic Park and why it could or could never happen, he seemed like he had something to say. So I was like, okay, then I would start deliberately connecting things like that, just outside of the classroom experiences to the classroom. And I started seeing the classroom as a place where you could just, it was like a clearinghouse. You could talk about all kinds of things, but it was a safe space. It was a community where we decided to explore and discuss things that connected in some way, shape, or form to, in this case, biology. So I think I always had that 2 a.m. When I was lesson planning, these are the things that I would think about at 2 a.m. How can I use the movie in my lesson plan tomorrow? So I think it was always a part of me, really.
Like that. The let's talk STEM, the mission.
Always.
Yeah. I like that.
Little did I know.
Yeah. So what I take away is it's almost like you're saying STEM applies to everything, but it also applies to everyone. And that's one of the cool things about TalkSTEM is it's, I always felt like I wasn't a STEM person. And it seems like you're challenging the notion that there is this thing called a STEM person versus not a STEM person. And we can all be STEM people.
Exactly. I remember that I never considered myself to be, actually, I considered myself to be an English literature person when I was a kid, and not a STEM person, and also not an art person, because I thought I was horrible at art. And of course, yes, okay, maybe I'm not going to be an artist you've ever heard of. So I would say these little pigeonholing things that we do to ourselves and our kids are not necessarily healthy. I did them to myself when I was a kid. And so I think I like the idea of mixing. Of course, I understand that there is a time and a place to dig deeper and build professional expertise. And I'm not saying that we just leave it at that. But I also say, let's broaden definitions and broaden our invitation for everyone to do some exploration in everything, in art, in STEM, in all of this. So because people have different on-ramps to things. So for example, one of our partners in TalkSTEM is an art museum. And guess what? There's a lot of overlap between art and science and math and so forth. So I guess part of the mission is to blur the lines a little bit, but deliberately, so that we can have that space to kind of question also whether we belong and whether those lines are as definitive as we used to think they were, which I would say they're not.
Yeah, that's super important because I was always intimidated by STEM. STEM is related to math. Dislike math, would much rather read a 1,000-page novel and dive into that. And when you find out it's so much more, same kind of story. I fell in love with reading. I could write papers and I love that kind of work. Didn't like math. I didn't have the artistic talent with my hand to draw. So I wrote off kind of all artistic talent. Now I'm learning that I can paint and I can do art on computers and so many different things. But
Exactly.
I was always intimidated. And I think if the lines had been blurred, I wouldn't have seen it as a yes or no, black and white. I would have seen it as an opportunity just to dive into and explore. As somebody who's, 41, look back at my life, and if it had been exposure to TalkSTEM, I think I would have been much more inclined to give things a shot that I was intimidated by. With the diverse voices and perspectives in STEM, how does storytelling play into it, and why is that such a powerful kind of piece to what you're doing?
So I think, first of all, I think science, STEM, is a collection of stories where we have stories that have explanatory power, certain kinds of stories. And the stories have changed because I'll put on my little philosophy of science hat here. What is knowledge, which is science, since it comes from the word knowledge, but a collection of tentative knowledge claims that is evidence-backed. The evidence part is obviously exceedingly important, but we also learned that with new evidence, sometimes things change. So Pluto is no longer, a planet, and so on and so forth. And we continue to have this unrolling of knowledge and development of new knowledge. And that's what's exciting about science. Following, a methodology where there is a strict claim to fact, but understanding that in light of new evidence, new knowledge can emerge. So I would say that given, I guess, my understanding of science as being this very specific kind of story following certain rules, as human beings, we're almost, I would say, just primed to be storytellers and listeners. And so I guess the primary ways in which we create resources on TalkSTEM is through storytelling. So we're most known for our videos. We have a collection of about 300 or more short videos that comprise our TalkSTEM video library, all open access and freely available on YouTube. And basically each of those, not all of them, but I'm going to talk about the Walk STEM and Math Walk videos, which are in the real world. So I guess our stories take place in the real world. That's part of the rules of the formation of the stories that we tell at TalkSTEM. And each video is a short video, anywhere from 1 to 5 minutes long, and is the backbone of the story is a key question. And so myself and my team spent some time coming up with a question that's based upon, noticings, brainstormings, and then a question where there's an art and science to posing a question. It just grabs us. Don't ask me why. It did. So when we went to the zoo and we were looking at the Giants of the Savannah exhibition, the question that emerged that we wanted to focus on is, well, is there a mathematical pattern to the way that all four-legged animals walk? We're looking at all of these wonderful four-legged animals that coexisted in this large habitat. Could it have been any number of other questions? Of course it could have, but that's the one we went with based upon our noticings and our brainstorming. So we create these little movies where we have the rule of it being real world, inquiry-based, following our methodology, and then we try and respond to it without using a ton of jargon. And there's a time and place for jargon, etc. We're trying not to do too much and just respond to that question either specifically or just as a general strategy. So that's really the bulk of the work that we do through our Walk STEM initiative, which is our key initiative at TalkSTEM.
Walk STEM, such a powerful concept, inviting learners to see STEM in the environment that's just around them naturally. What happens when a child realizes that, like, I guess, like, geometry is not a class or a textbook. It's like angles of a staircase. It's the symmetry of the mural. It's the, in the rhythm of a basketball bounce. Like, it's everywhere. Like, what happens when that connection happens in a child?
That's exactly the goal you want, of course, because then you can't turn it off in your head. Everywhere you go, you're like, oh my gosh, stop. One of my volunteers early on is like, when we first launched it, we used to do these live guided walks in downtown neighborhoods. And I remember this particular docent told me, you can't turn it off. I'll be sitting in the most boring conference room of all at work. And I'm just noticing, the slope of this ramp. Oh, I wonder what the slope is. I wonder if there's anything here around here where I could figure out. And she's like, you can't turn it off. And I'm like, good. That's what we want. The questions don't stop. And that's when I think we get true engagement, right? When we're not the ones as educators asking the questions, but the kids are, because their curiosity takes them there. And what we're doing through these videos that we have are just providing models. But what we ultimately want is for other educators to certainly use our videos to share and discuss and do whatever, but then to maybe the teachers could make their own videos. Maybe they're leading an after-school club, or maybe they're in their geometry class. But they can use their own places, which is much more powerful. The campus doesn't have to be a long, kind of complicated video. It could be just, you don't even need a video or a photo if you're in that place, but use the method. And then ultimately invite students to do the same thing as well. And so we've had teachers do that, and kids love it, So it does seem to be something, again, going back to your initial question of storytelling, everybody loves to tell stories in their own places. Kids do, the teachers do, and then I see our collection as just being a set of models that they can use to get going, to get started.
There's a surprising way that an educator who's adopted using Walk STEM in their teaching, how it's changed the relationship with them and their students and how they teach.
This is where, because we have so much of all, the reason I wanted to make this freely available to as many people as possible, so it's just online. So I don't really have as many of those stories directly from teachers as I would, but I have a few. I have a small cohort of teachers that I know in, close to home. And I think from what I gather, it's kind of the same story as with the docent. Once they start doing it, it just becomes not very hard to do. It's the idea of like, well, you could do field trips all the time. You don't have to organize that whole big, complicated day. I mean, do that too, of course, go further away from the campus. But guess what? Kids love to go visit their playground or the football field or whatever it is and use this lens. So I think a lot, the teachers that I've heard from who've used these methods have said, just going on a walk on campus is surprisingly exciting when it's part of class. It doesn't take a lot of planning necessarily. So they really love that aspect of things. And then the ones who've asked students to, do it homework or activities. Similarly, just even bringing it in. Sometimes they have the kids just bring in a photo from around their neighborhood or whatever, something in the school neighborhood, for example. People seem to love that because we're all taking photos, but to actually have a photo now become part of something your community is talking about in school or summer camp or whatever, it makes it feel really special to them. So I think generally that has been the feedback I've gotten.
Thinkering, we talk a lot about humanizing learning. That's the big mission here. How do you see TalkSTEM and Walk STEM helping educators kind of reclaim that human-centered side of STEM?
I think we kind of talked about it, telling your stories about your places and asking your questions. That's as human as it gets.
What's a good partner look like for you? Like a good community partner?
Yeah, somebody who will follow our recommended practice. So, so for example, if it's a community partner, we've got different types, and they're all great in their own ways based upon how they engage with learners, museums, zoos, larger organizations like that, but then also community centers and schools and so forth. But in any case, I think just really thinking about it very strategically, if you will, whether it's your own classroom or whether it's with a directive education at a big urban zoo. Where is this going to fit and how? Because then, we've worked with all these groups and we can share stories that work. So rather than, So for me, a good partner is somebody who is clear as to what the context is, what they want to do, and then understand the low-hanging fruit, our video library, go use it in ways that make sense. And in that sequence, the second thing would be for the educator themselves to create some content. We have a lot of advice and guidance freely available online. And the third thing is get your youth, whoever it is that you engage with, to then create. So, creating something is the highest order of thinking. So I would always recommend first start with, that's why we have this video library. It's easy to use. You can go on virtual walks and talk about them. And they're deliberately set in places that are, pretty common. Playgrounds, etc., as well as, fun things like, zoo habitats. So a wide range of different settings, but really think it through and look through our resources. And because ultimately, if we want to have kids learn about telling these kinds of stories, learn about their own power in noticing things and asking questions about their own neighborhood, so that STEM is not something that just happens in that fancy lab with specialized expensive equipment, but STEM is something that happens around them, which is obviously a key message of ours, then they need to be exposed to it more than once a year. So finding ways to have high frequency, doesn't have to take a long time, exposures in ways that make sense in your own context. I think that's the ideal part.
It's interesting that one thing I keep hearing from educators is that they don't want one extra thing to do. They're already spread too thin and burn out. And as soon as you started talking, I realized this is that invitation to take all of those things that are burning you out and then turn them into these experiences that are fun, that fill up your cup and the cup of the students. How do we get the kind of national sentiment to recognize that these aren't just nice to have programs or enrichment, but this is the kind of foundation for learning?
I mean, that's a tough one. I've been attacking that for over 10 years. Look, at least in this country, in the United States, there is a very clear divide. It seems like, I'm generalizing, obviously, there's exceptions, but to formal education and informal. So the nice to have is informal. And the formal is what you must know. You got to know your math facts. You got to do this because you got to get through this test, depending on what state you're in, whatever the standards are, whatever it is. So for me, the way that, and I feel, people may disagree, but I really wanted to go out and see, I feel like it's nice to have, but I also feel like it's important to remove this barrier that a lot of kids feel, like you and I used to feel, that we don't belong in this thing we call STEM. I think that's actually exceedingly important given the way the world is working today and the opportunities that exist and don't exist if you don't see yourself as somebody who can pose quantitative questions and so forth, right? It doesn't matter what job you do. If you want to move ahead, being able to wrestle with those kinds of data questions, etc., are important. You don't have to be a NASA scientist, but a good solid competency would be excellent. So I've partnered with a large textbook publishing company, because that's how I get it in the classroom. And I'm very excited because that's just launching this fall. And so millions of students in various states in the US now will be exposed to, this is a math textbook, so math walks, same methodology, same everything. And honestly, I'm very interested in broadening the definition of math. So when we look at a tree, from the geometry of the tree to the estimation stuff, there's so much going on. So math really forms the foundation of all of STEM, I would say. Again, not something that 8th grade me would have totally agreed with today. So I think for me, I feel like partnership, so partnering with that publishing company is going to be, I think, huge in terms of having impact for the groups of people that a small nonprofit like me could not have access to. Again, making everything available on YouTube and online, my hope is that will also help. But then again, there's a lot of videos out there. We were talking about this earlier. How do you get people to see value in yours? So that's still kind of an uphill battle. But I think partnership is what's key, and that's what Thinkering is all about. So we can find the common ground, and I invite, in fact, all teachers or educators and informal to use our methods. Just visit TalkSTEM.org. A lot of stuff that's free. In fact, most of our stuff is all free. This fall, we'll be launching an app that it's called the Math Finder app, where you get to find math in real-world places. It's a game that we've been building for the last 4 years, and it's been funded by the National Science Foundation. And we're going to be making a version of that app freely available on the App Store. Again, our hope is that, whether it's parents or, out of school educators, in school educators and kids will enjoy these different ways of kind of framing math so that it's not just the same old, but something a little different and exciting to you as a human being, because it's about what you find and how you look at it and what are the questions you raise. And that's the reason we have all these disciplines anyway, right? I mean, they are products of human ingenuity and curiosity.
Three more for you. When we look at trying to figure out how to phrase this, I guess as a builder, you're going to run into hurdles nonstop. What's the biggest thing that you've had to overcome in this challenge?
Just the term STEM, because there's this constant, almost instantaneous, either you're talking to someone and they're like, oh yeah, I belong, or I don't. But then even if I belong, you would think, okay, that's the fruitful line. But then what they belong to is something that looks very different from what I'm presenting. So then that very quickly shifts to, yeah, I don't know about this. There's these again, pigeonholing. And the whole idea behind coining the term STEM, which is now about 25 years old, was to blur the lines. But then unfortunately, very quickly, I think early in the century, it became its own little bucket that people decided. So I spent a lot of time defining what I do and what I don't do. So it becomes a very long-winded communication. And I think I lose people. That's been a big barrier.
It's fascinating though, because common language and understanding that definition, it's such a complicated thing because it's an acronym. So it just, when you say what is STEM, they're just going to tell you literally the acronym and what it stands for. And then you're like, okay, well, but what is that? What does that collection of things represent? And then it becomes this giant metaphorical, metaphysical conversation that would take an eternity to solve. And you realize this is almost more of a philosophical issue than it is just a normal one. What's the next 5 to 10 years look like?
Well, I'm excited. I mean, 10 years has been really the growth phase, the development and growth. I feel like we're now at a place, like I said, with this wonderful partnership with the textbook and with this app being developed. My hope is really to reach large numbers of people with our methods, with our content and this game that we've developed. And then also to find more other partners of like mind so that we can continue to kind of dabble, play with this and grow it even further in new directions. I think we've reached a point where we're able to do that because, with any startup, initially it's just about proof of concept. Does this strange video collection thing, real world question, what is that? It's not in a textbook. Who would want to do that and why and so forth. So I think there's been enough validation, both research wise and in terms of partnerships, that we can say the proof of concept is there. And so now we can move forward to these other, hopefully exciting, and continue to evolve because, it's not my goal to just stay still where we are, but to evolve and continue in some new directions that I currently am not thinking about.
Before we wrap up, what would you say to you and I back in middle school questioning ourselves about whether we belong in STEM? What would you tell us if you could go back in time?
Well, you and I were both big readers, right? So that was my favorite class. That was my award at the end of the year, was that. And I would say, what? Why don't you go and see what STEM or math, science is related to some of the books you've read, like maybe that's why I really was into Jurassic Park, which was a book before, And in fact, I remember a lot of the kids had read the book. So we talked about excerpts of the book as well. Like, for me, that would have been my on-ramp. And so if I could now go back and revisit that and kind of highlight that as an on-ramp, I probably would have gotten into it.
Amazing. And what would you say to educators who are curious about, they watch this, they like what they hear, how do they get started?
So talkstem.org, my email and everything is there also if you ever want to, get in touch. A lot of free resources. Last year, we just launched a all-free educator dashboard, which I'm trying to get some funding for to integrate with Google Classroom because the feedback has been that's what a lot of educators like to use, and having it integrated would be better for them. So I'm trying to make it as turnkey as possible. But the dashboard is there designed with the intention of making it easier for teachers and other educators who are interested in using our videos and our create your own WalkSTEM design worksheets, like in a turnkey way, so that they could use that in the classroom. We also have a TalkSTEM student app. It's a web app. So, it's almost easy. It's easy for teachers to have their kids maintain kind of a portfolio of their favorite videos from our platform, but also all the content that they generate and they make, so that it would be kind of fun. Like I have this vision of every kid having a TalkSTEM portfolio. Wouldn't it be fun to look back and share and compare and all of that? So we have those resources available freely online right now. So I would say do check it out, and yeah, get in touch with me, and let me know if I can help in any way. I'm happy to support.
Put links in the description for everybody. Appreciate you so much, Dr. Koshi. It's been fun. Until next time, everybody, keep thinkering, and let's keep walking and talking STEM.
Thank you.
That was too corny.
Love the term thinkering, and we'll definitely use it in my classroom. The kids will love it.
This is where we can be that peer support network with each other. When the big picture clicks, it's beautiful when you get administrators and teachers together.
You can't be a leader of other people if you can't first lead yourself, right?
Help the educator have a very clear and structured framework.
Becomes this real community hub. If you're a great educator, you're looking for the most powerful moment. Can we inspire kids to believe that the world needs who they were made to be?
I hope you guys continue to uphold that legacy and continue, finding kids like you.